And so this evening, we're going to speak to you about specific challenges that your sons face in working through the college application activities. No doubt you know them already, but we'll certainly talk about them from our point of view. We'll clarify their role and ours as counselors and offer suggestions as to how you can support their efforts. It's always good to keep in mind that the activities involved in constructing and launching a college application calls for one weighty decision after another. For example, where to apply. We're having those conversations now. How and when, how to address the who are you aspect of the application, and possibly most importantly, how to balance the obligations which compete for their time and energy, all the time preserving a little space for being a senior so they can enjoy those privileges and responsibilities that we all know are available to our seniors. So just a few things to be aware of. The application process may be, will be, can be at times stressful, right? And in truth, we've had students reflect afterwards that they put more into that than actually they felt throughout the process. So if they're supported and they're timely, then the stress obviously can be held at bay. Know that for us as counselors, it's important that we assist your sons in managing the stress, not just the application. So our doors are open. We're there as their counselors and their college advisors. They know we're here for them, and we want you to know it as well. We know, and we want them to know, that balance is key. Balance, a balanced college list. We're going to talk about some of these things in more detail in a few minutes. Take a balanced approach to the application process. In other words, a well thought out strategy. And that it's important to maintain a balance in activities, academics, service, drama, music, extracurriculars, relationships, and in the forming of their applications. Obviously, all things in balance. We also want to offer that timeouts are important. In our offices, maybe in your homes as well, we hope, that not every conversation with friends, parents, well-meaning relatives who visit is about college. We enjoy speaking with your sons about many things. And so oftentimes, and I've said this for many years in a row and kind of want to say it again, I'll meet a senior in the hallway or wherever, and the SLC will come down during lunch period and say, hey, how's everything going? And their immediate reaction is, I'm working on my essay. I say, no, how's everything going, right? We want to have those conversations, right? Yes, there's time for all of them, and we want to make sure that they don't see us necessarily as, hey, we always have to talk about college. We want to know who you are. We want to make sure that you're keeping that balance. It's also, I think, important and healthy to view steps in the application process as steps, right? And as a process. Break it down, chunk it out. We say this often: apply to create options. Final decisions, they come later. Okay, and again, and toward that point, senior year accomplishments can very much be in view. What's happening to them in senior year in their service and in some of their classes that they've been able to choose because they're elective classes and they've made those choices? What's happening there? Also, it's important, and again, we've said it to your sons and we'll say it publicly, it's important to maintain a healthy social media presence. And that it's also important to continue to be open to growth, something that we certainly talk about a lot. The application is and is meant to be a significant step in their own personal growth, involving decision-making, maturity, responsibility, confidence, all those things. And we're in the office, we're in the middle of it, anticipating your son's needs, answering their questions, guiding their application activities. By hosting a number of small group meetings, and again, some of these things will be talked about in greater detail, with college admissions representatives, we provide opportunities for your son to continue to investigate colleges and to determine and demonstrate their interest. We have said to your sons, and we'll certainly say this to you as well, that we do not expect them all to be in the same place. Make that point with great emphasis. A student could come in and say, hey, listen, I think I'm all set, ready to go. And the next student could say, hey, I'm still working on my college list. All are welcome. We don't expect that everyone will be in the same place. We want to get them moving, and we want to keep them moving. All right? Again, all questions are welcome. We're moving along in our group discussions with seniors. We've held a number of individual meetings as well with seniors and with college reps as well. Our goal tonight is basically to review with you what we've been discussing with your sons regarding the process of preparing and filing their applications, making it clear what we do and what your sons should do. Through it all, communication is key. Do not hesitate to call. If you parents have already said, hey, want to get on your calendar, get on our calendars. All right, the Calendly links are available to your sons. They're available to you as well. Let us know what you see or don't that you think you should see, and we'll do the same. All right, we want to work together. Lastly, our presentation this evening is being recorded, and the PowerPoint that you're going to see this evening as well will be sent out to you along with the recording. So again, thanks for being here. Welcome. We're going to move it along. You'll hear from each of the counselors. And next up is Mr. Francini.
Thank you guys all for being here. I have the two slides that I have are more checklists, and about say 90% of our guys who have been through, they've done most of this stuff. I'm just going to go through it with you guys so we can take a breather on some of these things. The main thing for all students and just parents to know is that Common App, when students put a school in Common Application, it's a one-way street. So whatever gets put in Common App automatically will populate into our Naviance program. Why is that the case? Because the students have already filled out the FERPA consent. We walked them through in class. If for whatever reason a student was absent, they can come by and see us. Any students who took place in the summer workshop, we did that with them. Any students that come to our office one-on-one, it's the first thing we do is make sure that stuff is done. One of the other things that we do is recommending teachers for letters of recommendation. We've done that already with the guys. We did it in class. We're going to follow up with them again tomorrow, as well as Friday when we're in their theology seminar classes. Make sure that, so some schools aren't on the Common App. For example, schools like Georgetown, Endicott, places like that, United States Coast Guard Academy, Naval Academy, those schools are not on the Common App. As a result, they have their own specific application. But as long as the school is listed in Naviance, we know you're applying there. So that is the master list. Whatever is in Naviance, colleges I'm applying to list, your sons know this, that is the master list. So that is the 100% list that we go off of. As I said, your son's already completed the FERPA consent, already done. If you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to us. But I would have to say almost all these guys have done this in class with us. We have at this point, John, about 150 colleges who have either already been through our door and more to come. 150 colleges total are coming to Fairfield Prep. And I'd probably say about 20, 30 or so. Yeah, that'd be weird if 150 came this past week and 150 more were coming. That would be insane. I don't want to deal with that. But anyway, we have had a handful of schools come through our door already, and we have more to come. I think University of Arizona just signed up again today, and Georgetown the other day. So we have a lot of schools coming. Students, we showed them how to do it. So if parents want to know, in colleges, under colleges I'm applying to, there is college visits, and your son can see which schools are coming that are on his list. Students should give their teachers about 48 hours notice to say, hey, Mr. Soto, by the way, is it possible that I miss class for X college to come? There might be a test. So my point is, students have to get permission from their teacher. And as I said, students requested letters of recommendation last year through Google Drive and talked to their teachers last year, but they now have to request them in Naviance. And once again, we went through this with them as well. College essays. I've had a handful. I'm sure all the counselors can attest. We've had a lot of college essays coming through the door. If your son is on my caseload, I'm like, okay, young man, read it to me. It's amazing how many kids, I'm an auditory learner, so I just want to hear what the essay sounds like. And if it passes the ear test, we move on to stage 2 of actually reading it and going through it and everything. We have resources here in our building, both upstairs in the English department, as well as Mrs. Bechtold in our academic center, who is an English writing specialist. She spent about a decade or so down in Darien or New Canaan, I forget which one, I apologize, teaching junior and senior level English. So a lot of students have been using her resources. And oftentimes students will come in with their Common App. We'll open it up on our computers. We'll look at the activity section, make sure it's written properly. And the bottom line is we just want to make sure, the colleges know what student government is, but what did you specifically do for student government? What did you do in the ecology club? How many years did you participate? How many hours did you spend playing football a week? Those things. They want to have a general sense of what it is you do beyond academics. Okay? So those are things we'll go through. And colleges also have, in Common App, there's under the, oh my God, losing my train of thought here. Specific to each college, there is their own application. Like, are you applying early action? Which major are you applying to? Are you looking for housing on college? All that stuff is in Common Application, and we can help your sons walk through that process as well. And just students need to be aware of deadlines, and as parents, try to keep them on target as best as possible. And one thing parents can certainly help out is with the SRAR, which Rick is going to talk about at length. But here's just a little checklist for you guys. And as I said, check with your sons when you get home and see where they are in the process. And I'm going to pass this on to John.
All right, so some of these things are going to be overlapping, as you can see from initial comments and things that we say. Again, I mentioned this just in opening comments. When a college list is final, I think we think about it as applying to create choices. So an example, and there are lots of them. You know, all of us have had students, for example, that have come in at the beginning of the year with, hey, this is the college I'd like to attend. They apply to however many colleges, 2, 4, 6, whatever it might be. The average is 9, but you don't have to reach the average. And they get into colleges that, you know, they expected to get into, but they weren't looking at as fondly as this particular college. And they'll change their mind. So I had a student last year applied to a small liberal arts college in the Northeast, and he ended up at Northeastern University, a large urban university in Boston. Happens all the time. They're different in May than they are in September, October. So I think leaving space is really what I'm talking about here. So comprehensive list. So it doesn't mean you apply to every school on the planet, but it does mean that, hey, there are schools on that list that you're not sure that you might not really be sure that you like them as much. In fact, you know, as Pete mentioned, they're going to send their representatives here. University of Arizona has great programs, by the way. I can't visit, but I can visit with the rep here. All those things help them to create that list. Balanced, what does that mean? Again, you know, obviously there are schools that we all need to sort of agree that your sons are going to have a good chance of being admitted to. Right? There's a lot of good data in Naviance, and that can help as well. Some of the questions that come up really are when to submit scores, at what level do we submit scores? All those are good questions, and that's part of that balance. So create a balanced list, balanced as in reach, absolutely. So if the student came in and presented us with a list, and on that list there were no reach schools, schools that were sort of at that eye level and a little bit above, we're going to say, listen, where are your reaches? And we won't make students change their list, but you know what? Get the challenge going. Finding your ceiling is really kind of important, I think. Don't be your own admissions committee, is what we say a lot, all right? Say, I don't think I'll get in here. Well, how will you find out? Well, I have to apply. Apply. All right, so I think that's really part of that balanced list. And so, again, we want to be able to talk about that. And by the way, part of the balance, you know, there are students who come in and kind of ask a little bit about, you know, what are some schools that present really good merit packages? You know, we can have that conversation. We don't know all of them necessarily, but we can have that conversation. So we're pretty well aware of that. And so some schools are very transparent. Fairfield U is very transparent in terms of what they provide for merits. And so again, you know, maybe that's part of the conversation as well, all part of the same conversation. We want to review the final list, absolutely. We don't tell students where to apply and where not to apply, but we want to make sure that the list really fits them from where we sit. So we'll offer our advice. That's really what that final review is all about. What would be an example of a strategy? Applying to 6, let's say 8 schools, all right? And at 4 of those 8, we gauge by the data and by the students' performance, hey, these are schools where I have a very good chance to be admitted, and all of them offer early action. Well, there you go. All right, let's get things done. And I think early action provides the opportunity to get an application over the line. The process is done at those schools. And then there are 4 schools on the list where, you know, maybe another semester of great grades would enhance that student's opportunity to be admitted to the college. So maybe it's a 4+4. The question is often asked about early decision. Is it an advantage in the admissions process? Well, the answer is yes. But again, it's a total commitment. All right, so again, if the early decision, you've basically decided that you're going to enroll, and I think that's important. So strategy is good, early or later, whatever it might be, and we have this conversation a lot. You know, I think it's important, you know, to know that early action, although there are some schools that simply say apply early action, we want to see that. There are other schools that say you're the same candidate early or regular, so we'll apply when you are strongest. So that would be a good strategy. Complete the activity sections, already been said. Consider a resume. So for example, you know, if your son is going to interview at a college or university, and interviews aren't available everywhere, we know that. Resume's a nice, hey, nice to meet you, brought my resume along. Actually, we're doing some interviews on this campus tomorrow, and we have a number of students who are going to elect to interview with Fordham University, which is a virtual interview. So we'll be passing along to your sons who are applying to Fordham who wish to interview a link, and it'll be almost like a Calendly type of setup. So they'll basically, you know, meet with the representative virtually. And of course, why not? Flip along a resume, for example, send it by email. Enter activities and review them with your counselor. Again, the truth is that how students describe themselves. You know, we talked about the who are you of an application and where does that happen? Well, it certainly happens in their essay. We know that. It's corroborated basically in recommendations, counselor, and teacher, but activities say a lot. What are activities? They're the things you do that you don't have to do, you choose to do. So I think that becomes a really important piece as well. Pete mentioned this already, so I'm not going to dwell on this one, but I will say this. Can I insist that my students bring their essays in? Well, I try. I do, and they bring them, by the way. I've got a nice little folder of those. And some of them are, hey, I'm done. And some of them are like, I'm still working on this. Great. So what do I get out of reading my students' essays? Maybe something that is central to their life that we've never talked about, or never talked about to that depth. So I learned some awesome things about your sons, about my students from their essays. Reading them is important. I don't necessarily have to be a feedback person, and I'm not an essay specialist, but I'm a good reader and I learn things. And so obviously that can become part of a conversation and a recommendation. Said this already, optional, if a college says, we offer you the opportunity to create or to submit an optional an optional letter, an optional essay. Is optional really optional? I guess it's if you're all in, paying the fee and applying, it's an opportunity, by the way, to make yourself known in a very different way in many cases, because those questions are specific to the college. So optional is not optional. Okay, that might get a frown out of that one when we have that conversation, but no, optional is not optional. Essay and supplementals, again, opportunity to truly speak for yourself, reveal yourself. We talked about the who are you. I'm a big fan of that simple statement, show, don't tell. Right? Don't tell them who you are, because in fact, you validate the who are you by the story you tell. And if you take a look at those common application essay prompts, they all end with something like, if this sounds like you, share your story. Right? Don't give us a list of all the things you do, share your story. What did you get out of it? How did that trip or that experience or whatever, how did it impact you and change you? So all those things are part of the essay, the common application personal essay. And now I'm going to turn this over to Rick Hutchinson.
I thought I'd get boos when you saw testing up there. That's usually what we get. So, all right, so I'm going to touch on testing and sort of where that sits with your son. And I think it's an individual decision for every student right now. I know we're in the final stages of testing. I know those August SAT scores just came back just recently, and students just sort of completed an ACT for September. And then I know some students are looking at an SAT in early October, and some may be looking at an ACT late in October, and possibly something down the line. But we're really sort of heading into those final stages. So really it comes up with the decision students are going to need to make is that, will testing be a part of my application? This is a great thing that we can help students make. I think we always emphasize that it's a decision they're going to need to make. There's no absolute answers, but certainly it's something your counselor can help give you some context and a situation of where testing might be advantageous for you to be a part of your application, and where maybe it's best to sort of leave that off and let the other aspects of who you are sort of shine. Most colleges do continue to be test optional, meaning they will allow the students to have the option of sending it in or not. Those that are starting to require it now are really the truly highly selective colleges, not all, but many highly selective colleges. Georgetown was sort of the first one out of the gate. There's 4 Ivy League schools that do, 4 that don't. The ones that do are Brown, Dartmouth, Harvard, and Yale, I believe, and then the other 4 are not. So it's going to be a situation where your son might be a situation where they're going to be sort of have no choice but to submit. In other cases, they might sort of pull that back. And again, a great conversation that we can have and help them in making that decision. One important detail, and this is something that we like to emphasize, is that in the common application, there is a self-reported area for your test scores. We can self-report your test scores. We really want to emphasize, I would not fill that section out unless you're intending for your scores to go to all colleges. So even if you have a situation where, okay, a couple colleges require, a couple don't, I leave that blank because you can submit your scores, and I'll talk about that in a second. You can submit your scores, to the college without having to self-report it. I think that's an important detail. I just had a student in my office this week, and he had sort of, good for him, he's trying to be as thorough as possible. And I said, whoa, time out. You're not submitting your test scores to college. Why did you self-report those in there? Luckily, not everyone realizes this. The colleges that don't require testing sometimes actually block from getting that, but it's not all. Same thing with AP test scores. They are not required by colleges. I would recommend that they not be self-reported in your common application. If for some reason you feel strongly that they should be reported, or if for some reason, please consult us and we can have. There are some situations where possibly that might be a good idea, but colleges are not using those for admission purposes, so we usually recommend that they not be self-reported in your common application. The best way, if you are making the decision to submit your scores to the college, the best way is to send it straight through the testing organization. So College Board for SAT or the ACT. Son can go to the account, choose the colleges you want to send to, and send it off. Be aware that there is a little bit of a delay from when you send them, from when you make the request to when they're sent. It's not an instantaneous, so give yourself about a week leeway from a deadline to get those sent off. October SAT scores, for those taking early October, they're due to be back to students, I think, about October 18th. So that still gives you some time to take a look at those and make a decision. You know, if you're kind of waiting for those scores to come in, decide whether you're going to submit, you'll still have some time to send those. But you don't want on October 31st to be submitting your scores through the College Board for November 1st deadline, because there's a chance they may not arrive by November 1st because there can be a little bit of delay. Some colleges do allow you to self-report your scores. This is where, when colleges say they try to make things easier, they make it more confusing. It is true. Some of them will allow the honor system self-report it. Put it in your Common App, or don't. But again, you run into that problem. You're reporting your Common App, but maybe you didn't want it for some schools and not the others. There is a cost to sending it directly from the testing agencies. I understand that, but that is probably the surest way to get them there. If you have a situation where cost comes into play, you know, seek your counselor out. We might be able to sort of find ways to get them there where self-reporting it, but that's really the best, is just to send it directly from the testing agencies. So anything really floating with any questions your sons have about testing, we're here to talk to them about it and help them sort of make some decisions moving forward. This is something I'm not sure everyone's aware of, but it's been a movement that's gotten certainly gaining steam. And that's historically, the high school will always send the student's transcript to the college, and we continue to do that. However, there is a band of colleges that are no longer looking at the transcript. They're asking students to self-report their grades. They literally will go in and write in the classes they've taken and the grades that they've received. Of course, once again, there's not one uniform way to do this. But fear not, we're covering this in the next 2 days with the students. And also fear not, it's really not that hard to do. It's just, I won't lie to you, it's a little time consuming. If you haven't done it, if anyone that's done it for a previous student you might have had gone to college, you know, it's not terribly hard. It's just a little bit time consuming. So there are three main ways in which students could end up submitting them to colleges. Some colleges elect to use the courses and grades section in Common Application, and I'll get back to how that works. Others are using a thing called the SRAR, or the SAR, called the Self-Reported Academic Record, which is a separate vendor. And then the University of California, anything within the University of California system. So that would be UCLA, UC Berkeley, UC San Diego. They have their own self-reported section in their application. The University of California does not use the Common Application. They have their own application, and they self-report in there. It is pretty straightforward. If your son's applying to the University of California system, it's pretty straightforward. I had a student in my office. He was very panicked about it. We sat and we started doing it. He's like, "Oh, this is really easy," and it was. It really wasn't too complicated. We can provide you with a copy of their official transcript, so when they submit these. A couple points to this. It's very important that when you're filling this out, it should be exactly as your transcript reads. So don't do abbreviations. Exactly as the transcript reads, that's how you should be reporting it. The courses and grades section in Common Application. Yeah, how do you know what college is required and which don't? When the students enter in their Common Application, their colleges, if a college requires it, it'll pop right up there. It'll say, you need to fill out this section. A couple of colleges that use this are Purdue, Stanford, you can think Virginia Tech is SAR, but Loyola Marymount is another one. It'll come right up and it'll say, you'll need to fill in this section, and it's pretty straightforward. Filling in the courses and grades in the Common Application, it's a lot like the University of California system. It's really not very complicated. It's pretty straightforward filling that out. Then there are the colleges that use the self-reported academic record, the SAR. This is mostly, it's about a group of about 30 colleges, mostly large state universities. Penn State, University of Massachusetts, University of Delaware, Rutgers, and there's others. University of Pittsburgh, and go on. They use this self-reported. You will have to set up it's a separate account you set up, you go in and fill it out. This is a little more involved and asks a few more questions. So we've put together a little guide for the students to fill out. Again, they can fill it out. Don't panic. About 80,000 students applied to Penn State last year, and they all figured it out. They'll figure it out. But just to try to help them along, we put together a little guide to help filling out the SAR, because that one is just a little bit more involved. It really is, the issue really is probably time than it is necessarily a difficulty in filling it out. So we're going to review that for them. It's posted, that little guide is posted in their Schoology account, and we're literally going to be reviewing it with them either Thursday or Friday, depending on when their counseling class meets. So that is that. Questions that, again, always ask us, and we're happy to help them.
Hi, everybody. So I'm going to go over kind of who does what, and then I'm just going to talk about a little bit about what you can do, right? Like what you have access to, what you can do as parents to help support your sons. So we have this nice little graphic that kind of says who is responsible for sending everything. And remember, we're going to send this out to you as well. So what your sons and what the student is responsible for is their common application. Like, we do not have access to their common apps. Like, they have their own logins. They're responsible for filling out and submitting their applications. Their test scores, as Rick said, to go into College Board or go into ACT, and make sure that those are submitted in enough time, to make sure that they know when those deadlines are for those schools to submit those test scores. They're responsible for the fees that come with all of the applications and sending the test scores as well. And the SRAR, again, that's something we don't have access to. So we can't even go in there. We have no way of signing in. That is all the responsibility of the student. Submitted directly to the colleges by the teacher are the recommendations. So what we've been doing in our seminars is going over the boys last spring filled out Google Forms and identified the 2 teachers that they were going to request applications from. And then the next part of that process is, now that we're live, they've got colleges in their applications, they go into Naviance, which again, most of them have done, and make those requests. It's pretty much the first thing that we all do when they come into our office, make sure that that is done. So the teachers then directly through Naviance, not through Common App, will send their recommendations to the schools. It's all linked up. And then our responsibility as the counselors is that we will be sending the transcripts, the school profile, the secondary school report, and your counselor and their counselor recommendations. So those are kind of the 3 buckets, right, of how everything gets to the admissions file, and who's responsible for all of those things. We thought just seeing a graphic, just knowing, and we've got our side of it, right? We know that, but it's really important. I think we saw some of those things in that very first list. Is make sure your list you've got about a month ahead of time, so that we can make sure that we can go through and make sure everything's in order. Go over their transcripts with them. Make sure that we have all of our information, and that the teachers have enough lead up time to make sure that they have time to get those recommendations out. Okay, what can parents do? So first of all, I just want to say I feel like I'm graduating with your boys, because this is my 4th year with your sons. I've had the honor of walking through since freshman year with these boys. So it's really exciting for me. And I'm really grateful for that. I'm going to be a mess in the spring. But some things that parents can do. One, I say this a lot to parents when they're in my office, is that we're there for you. We're walking with the boys. We're there for them, and we're there for you. And that if we do this in little steps, Mr. Henry had said, chunk it up, we're going to get there, right? That it absolutely feels overwhelming when you've got those checklists in front of you, but know that it just is a matter of checking it off one by one. And that I'm going to offer some ideas of how that might help with the communication, because I don't know about you, but the communication might be challenging, and maybe they think you don't know anything at all, because I have that problem at my house. So parent brag sheets. If you have not submitted a brag sheet, it does help with our recommendations. Even if you want to update us with something that maybe that has been going on. Maybe you did a brag sheet in June and you want to get back to us and let us know of things that have happened. Reach out to us. We're still tweaking, we're still working on our recommendations. We're still tweaking them. We're still making changes as we go and as we're ready to submit. Remember that it's a process, right? That again, we have to take things little by little. Keep the conversation fresh. So one way that I might recommend doing this is picking like a day of the week that you talk about it, because it gets very overwhelming. And I do it myself to every day, because it's on your mind all the time to say, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Right? And the answer is probably no, leave me alone. I got it. So, one idea is to maybe say Sunday afternoon, give me an hour. Let's take an hour and let's just make sure some of these things are checked off. Set maybe a little bit of a goal of, can you have these things done, and just show me, right? Because you are a big part of this process, whether they like to admit that or not. But to set that time so it's not it's not the only thing that you talk about, because they are still doing their school. They know that their grades are important. They're doing these sports. There's such amazing young men who are doing so many amazing things, that just set that time aside to carve it out, that communication time for the two of you. Recognize the senior year as a special time for your son, right? There's so much going on. They change so much between now and June. They want to enjoy it. They've looked forward to this basically for as long as they could remember, right? So you think back to kindergarten, this is what they've thought about their senior year, and there's expectations for that. They're not everything's going to go perfectly. There's going to be ups and downs. They're having a lot of conversations. I know that they talk among themselves. Give them a little bit of breathing space, and to recognize that we want them to have a good time too. Mr. D said in the beginning, expect success. It will happen. It does happen. And sometimes, I had a student last year, Mr. Henry was saying that he walked in junior year and it was all giant state schools, and he ended up at a small, last minute, small New England college, and could not be happier. And it just started to check off all the buttons. As we drilled down, that took it was a lot of conversation. It was a lot of visits. And he, his mother, I'm not going to lie, was like, he is not talking to me. I don't know what's going to happen. And she was in tears at graduation. And reach out, contact us. We want to help. The more that we know and the more that we can help, the better it's going to be for everybody. If you sometimes, let's say you want to get a message to your son, but you can't say it to them directly, tell it to us, and then we can say it to them, right? If you're worried that they haven't done something and you don't want to, tip the cart, call us. And then we can just call, hey, did you send that letter of recommendation? Or, oh, I'm looking through your Naviance and I don't see this. Or is this your final list, right? We can be that mediation person for you. Okay, finances. This is another thing that you guys can do, of course. So hopefully the FAFSA is better this year. Last year was a bit of a hot mess. This year, it's not October 1st, it's December 1st. They say that it's going to be up and ready to go and that they're working out the kinks, right? December 1st, yeah. So that's something that you could get ready for. I believe before that, the December 1st, you can get your FAFSA ID number, which is a good thing to do. It's a little daunting when you get on there. We're going to have a FAFSA night later this fall, right? I think, yeah, that will be able to help work through some of those details. Again, just from your end of it, I'm going to say as somebody who's been through it, it seems more daunting than it is. It is not necessarily, super intuitive, but once you get in, you start to be able to process it. If your son is applying to a private school, usually the private schools, they take something called the CSS profile. It's accessible through their College Board account, and it's called the CSS profile. So for some of the private schools, this is a document that takes a little bit of a deeper dive. They ask some different questions than the FAFSA. That will be open October 1st. And that will provide a lot of the like I know Fairfield U is saying that pretty much provides everything that they need for the university's merit and scholarship aid. The FAFSA is for the federal side of it, but a lot of schools will use the CSS profile. So that's something that can be done. And then scholarship opportunities. Again, this is maybe one of those things you save for that Sunday afternoon conversation of saying, let's start to look at scholarship opportunities. On Naviance, there will be a list that really ramps up. There's some definitely available now, but it really ramps up after the first of the year to start to keep an eye on deadlines. and I'm just going to throw out a couple other things that, they're like the SAR and doing the things like inputting some of the details, that kind of busy work. That's something that, if you're inclined to do and your son would let you, that's probably something that's pretty, it's just data entry. That's something that you could probably help with, and you can maybe take that off of their shoulders. And again, something that if you sit down with them and keep that conversation open, they might be open to that as well. That is it. If anybody has any questions, we're all available for questions. We want to take any as a group. Yeah. Okay. I'll let Mr. Hanahan take it.
Yeah.
So just, this will go out in an email as well, but the University of Notre Dame is holding a Notre Dame evening here on the 25th. Open to anyone and everyone. It's actually open to people in the area, not just prep families. 7 o'clock to 8:30, and the Notre Dame admissions rep will be here with a team from Fairfield County Notre Dame Club. So if your son's looking at the University of Notre Dame, certainly you might want to consider that evening. They're not going to do a specific Fairfield prep school visit, so it'll be an evening visit. Okay, so we're open to questions, or if there are no specific questions for the large group, we'll be here, and we'll be around this evening as well, upstairs, around the counseling office. Feel free to drop by, but we do